Hi, my name is Shobhit, and thank you, Huddle team, for organizing this event. 10 years ago, I was doing my first startup. It was actually in WebRTC space, and it's great to come and talk in Web3 event in DRTC space. Okay, so 2015 was again another important year. IPFS got launched. The amazing thing about IPFS is what I love this quote from Phil Carlton. Right, there are two hard things in computer science. It is caching and naming things. IPFS got the naming right. The idea of interplanetary file system has been fascinating me since then. But at the same time, in the same year, I exited my second startup to Gojek, which is a Southeast Asian super app. The startup did an IPO last year at 128 billion, and I've been running engineering and product for them. It's a very large Web2 app business where we used to do millions transactions every day. As I was going through Gojek, it was a time warp, right? There was a lot of emerging ideas on the side, right? And we were looking at decentralization and Web3 also rising in parallel, right? These labels are useful because labels allows you to communicate ideas, but these labels can also become a prison if you don't make bridges to other places, right? So you have to build bridges between these islands. So you have to go back to the origin and see where they all connect. So the origin, right? So web was announced by Tim Berners-Lee in 1991 to a hypertext mailing list where he said the worldwide project aims to allow links to be made to any information anywhere. This started a revolution. In 1993, we had the first popular browser called Mosaic. But but Mosaic was pretty interesting, right? Because it's kind of like what we have today. A lot of things are undefined. A lot of ideas are getting built. People are take HTTP had no spec. It was called a one-line protocol. And then finally, in 1996, people standardized some of it. Right at that time, Mosaic took a decision choice of just having GET request in HTTP. So it ended up being a read-only web. And then the race began to start thinking about read and write. So this is where a new standard came out back in 1999. It was called WebDAV, right? It's Web Distributed Authoring and Versioning Protocol. It's an internet standard in 1999. It's pretty interesting. The guy who created was Jim Whitefield. The protocol had the file system view of the internet, right? And the goal of the protocol was to make files to be available and accessible and manageable for end users. The how WebDAV was made was it was an extension of HTTP, right? They worked on series of things which increased what HTTP can do, and this was touted as a strength, right? Because now you can actually do more with the same, but this strength turned out to be the weakness, right? The big problem was the server never implemented the WebDAV, right? And at that time, a lot of people were trying to figure out how to build these APIs, and REST became the standard, and then we have RESTful APIs, right? And then we have this thing like, oh, Hotel California thing going on there, right? But interestingly, WebDAV was not completely lost. Now you had a limited role. It found its home in spaces in personal information management category, right? Where stuff like notes, address books, calendars, these are things which are very focused on one individuals and their own data, is where this protocol find home, right? A lot of work was actually done by Apple on this, right? Because Apple being a hardware first company is quite different in what they can do, how they think about cloud, right? Apple's view of cloud is as a sync layer, while a lot of other Web2 companies which are primarily server first in nature, they the business is in the cloud, right? While Apple's perspective is I have hardwares and then there is a synchronization going on there, right? So Apple ended up writing protocols for address books, for calendars, which are like again internet standards. A lot of app store mobile apps are successful because of those standards, right? And then again, back in 2015, the party started again, and then IPFS came back. Then they it just refreshed this view again, right? And as the evolution moved forward, this time took an interesting choice, right? This time IPFS set out to be an alternative to HTTP, not an extension, because we have seen, right? The one of the core idea on IPFS was content addressing, which allows you to point to data irrespective of the location, right? That's the key innovation which unlocked so many things, right? This led us to have new app models, which is where we are. And in this model, identity and accounts are free from the servers. And this is where we are today, right? Where we are right now marching towards a decentralized identity kind of an ecosystem, right? Uh, so this is, it's not just like, the Web3 community is realizing it. I think governments are also realizing it. uh, European Union has this regulation called GDPR. Uh, they have forced some of the companies to end up build a JSON export of sorts so that they can take a data out of their servers. But we all know that's kind of useless, right? So what we are looking for is some sort of a credible exit where how can we port our data on which other apps can interop on, right? So this is where we come in. We are working towards this future of this world, and then we are trying to design an address book protocol, which is basically we are thinking through the same problems but thinking how to build modern solutions of that. Thank you.